All right. Hello, hello. I've been waiting to ring that gong for 10 years, so I'm glad I didn't knock it down. Hello, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Crystal Bryant, a member of the City Club's debate committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our debate in the Democratic primary contest to select the nominee for Cuyahoga County Prosecutor. Before we introduce our candidates and our moderator, here's how this debate will work. The candidates will each have opening statements in an order determined by chance, and then our moderator will put questions to each of the candidates. Our goal in this debate is to have more of an organic conversation than a strict adherence to timekeeping. Nevertheless, our timekeeper and our moderator will strive to ensure equal time for both candidates. Now, one of the candidates. Tim McGinty started his public service as a Cuyahoga County probation officer. After being a probation officer, he then began to serve as county prosecutor, and after serving as county prosecutor, he then became a Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas judge. Since that time, since 2012, he serves as the incumbent in the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. Mr. Tim O'Malley started his career in public service as a Cleveland, Mike O'Malley. I was going, huh? Mr. Mike O'Malley started his career in public service as a Cleveland Municipal Court bailiff. After working as a bailiff, he served as Cleveland City Council, and after working as Cleveland City Council, he also served at the prosecutor's office for the county for 8 years. After serving in that role, he then became the public safety director for Parma, which is his most current position that he stepped down from in order to run for office today. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome both our candidates. All right. So now it's my pleasure to hand off our program to our moderator, Brandon Cox. Brandon is an attorney at Tucker Ellis and a member of the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar, the Federal Bar, and the Norman S. Minor Bar Association. And like both of our candidates, he is a graduate of the Cleveland Marshall College of Law. Thank you, Brandon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having us. Thank you again, Crystal. Gentlemen, it's good to have you both here. Let's do a quick word about timing. You'll each have 2 minutes to do opening statements. After the opening statements, I have a series of questions for you, and you'll each have 90 seconds for the responses. If there are any rebuttals needed, those will happen with 30 seconds each. To help you keep time, our timekeeper will hold up a yellow card when you have 15 seconds left and a red card when your time is elapsed. We thank you in advance for respecting the rules around timing, and we look forward to a great conversation. We'll first start with our opening statements. We have determined the order, and Mr. O'Malley, you will proceed first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here at this important event. In 3 weeks, voters will select the next county prosecutor. The choice is between our current prosecutor, Mr. McGinty, or voting for me, an individual with a 30-year record of working well with others to accomplish common goals on behalf of our citizens. I do not believe we could be any more different. We often hear that judicial candidates may or may not possess the temperament to be a good judge. Make no mistake, there is a necessary temperament to be a good county prosecutor. Citizens should look for an individual who is calm and composed, who is ethical and treats all citizens in an appropriate manner. A good prosecutor pursues justice first and foremost. A good prosecutor does not possess a win-at-all-cost mentality. A good prosecutor works cooperatively with community partners to identify and implement reforms to improve our justice system. My opponent has served as county prosecutor for 3.5 years. The county's criminal justice system has been on a roller coaster ride ever since. We are all aware of the numerous fights with individual judges, the bench as a whole, the criminal defense bar, and police officers. We also have known that he has alienated many communities with his poor choice of words. In short, my opponent does not possess the temperament to work with others or to work to improve the justice system for victims and defendants. As county prosecutor, I seek to continue the work I started as first assistant Cuyahoga County prosecutor. I am proud to have assisted in the implementation of a state-of-the-art case management system. That case management system was critical to the success of our open discovery policy that began during my tenure. As county prosecutor, I will return to the office of the community-based prosecution model, and I will work with the common pleas judges to expand the drug court. In collaboration with state legislators, I will advocate to change the way we handle the use of deadly force cases to restore confidence in the criminal justice system. Just as I have in the past, I will work with all stakeholders to jumpstart the justice system reform movement once again. I believe my temperament, my administrative experience, and a 30-year record of working well with others make me the best candidate for Cuyahoga County Prosecutor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Mr. McGinty, we'll hear from your opening statement.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 4 years ago, I left the bench and I ran for prosecutor to make a difference in this city, to make corrections in our criminal justice system and deliver a higher quality of justice. And we have, and we've worked hard to do so. I've restructured the prosecutor's office to focus our limited resources on the habitual violent criminals, small in number, though, but responsible for 2/3 of the dangerous crime. We have made successful strides. We also aim to reduce indictments, increase rehabilitation, diversion, drug, mental health programs for the 85% who are charged with low-level cases. I am extremely proud of our record, our prosecuting attorneys, and our staff. They have met the challenge and passed every test. We all remember the challenge of the Castro case and the 3 survivors, and Acevedo and Camellia Terry, and apprehending the serial rapists. And finally, the 1984 murder of Gloria Pointer that was finally solved. We have concentrated on these high-level, important cases. And to lead a team like this, you need a prosecutor with extensive trial experience. I've had over 33 years in a courtroom, including over 18 years as a judge. We now run the prosecutor's office like a business. Our only product is justice. We've eliminated politics and patronage. Without it, morale is up. We measure performance. We are accountable to the public, and it's all online. We aim for a culture of continuous improvement and seek out the best practices in diversity. We learn from mistakes of ours and others in the past and correct. The public corruption crisis will not be allowed to return. We have reformed our very important juvenile court and family law operations. Our goal is not to overcharge, and to prove it, we have reduced the death penalty by over 90%. Our rape kit is a national model, a rape kit task force. We took a huge backlog of ignored rape kits in our way to solving 1,000 of these forgotten rapes. We have a 90% conviction rate and an average sentence of 10 years. As Attorney General DeWine noted, we will never know how many women won't be raped because of this unprecedented effort. I have and I will continue to fight vigorously for the victims of reform, even if it ruffles feathers. Victims also deserve justice. I will be a vigorous advocate for justice. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, and let's get right into the questions. I'll direct my first question to Mr. McGinty. There's an old adage in the legal field, justice delayed is justice denied. Many people criticize the prosecutor's handling of the Tamir Rice matter, saying that the result was not only incorrect, but that the process took too long. In hindsight, could the grand jury process have been handled differently and perhaps more efficiently and with a greater level of transparency?
Yes is the question, and yes is the answer to the question. We always learn from every experience, and in hindsight, it could have been handled faster and better. This is a new process we've begun. Before I took office, the cases were decided in the prosecutor's office. They did not go to the grand jury. After watching other use of deadly force cases be mishandled before I took office, under the previous administration in which Mr. O'Malley was in charge, I said we're going to take every single case to the grand jury. I don't have to take them to the grand jury. I took them to the grand jury to make the final call. And I also said we would put public reports out. So we've issued public reports, so we do not have a Ferguson situation or we do not have a Chicago situation. We're up front. We issue the investigative report, so it is not a secrecy. It is not a mystery. And we then can begin corrections. Every system should be corrected and recorrected as we move along. The End result is the opportunity to reform. We look at the high-speed chase, the 23-minute, 23-mile East Cleveland 137-shot shooting. We have made corrections since then. There has been no more high-speed chases. There has been discipline. There has been body cams and dash cams being installed so the problem will not reoccur. We have learned lessons. We adapt as we move through the system. Thank you.
Mr. O'Malley, would you like to respond?
Certainly. The time that it is taking in these use of deadly force cases is not acceptable. You know, the Tanisha Anderson case just last week, which is now going into its 16th month, was just farmed out to a special prosecutor. There is approximately a dozen or so other cases that are still under review. We have to do better. Farming a case out to the Attorney General 6 months into an investigation is unacceptable. It's unacceptable for the family involved. It's unacceptable for the officers involved who continue to blow in the wind waiting for a decision. We have to do better. As Parma's safety director, we had a shooting on I-480 of a suspect in a aggravated robbery of a pizza shop in Parma Heights. There was 3 different law enforcement agencies involved in that shooting. Roughly 4 months later, we are still waiting a decision and determination. These issues, by not resolving them quickly, continue to be an open wound festering in this community. We have to do better, or the wound will continue to get infected, and I think we're seeing that with these potential cases. With the Tanisha Anderson case, we may be looking at 2 years or 3 years for a resolution, and that is unacceptable.
Mr. O'Malley, you mentioned that the timing that it is taking for cases is unacceptable. What specific plan or strategy do you have to address the timing issue so that we can go from fewer than 16 months and getting these cases through quicker?
That's a great question. You know, I have proposed a plan, and I have met with one of our local state senators to push a change in Ohio law where these cases are immediately investigated by an independent agency. I have proposed that we allow the Attorney General's office, the BCI division of the Attorney General's office, to immediately begin the investigation, as well as handling any prosecution. That way, it's a one-stop issue. It stays within the Attorney General's office, and more importantly, to the people in the community. What I have heard as I've campaigned around this county from east side to west side, from north to south, is that people feel there's a conflict inherent when the county prosecutor's office or the local police agency investigates their own shootings. We need to remove that conflict to, again, restore confidence in the investigation and restore confidence in the prosecution. And we can do that by farming the issue out to the Attorney General first and foremost. I believe we're at a point now in our country, due to the nature of these events happening throughout the country, the publicity they're raising, that now is the time to strike. Now is the time we can go down to and work with our state legislatures in Columbus and get the law changed to allow this to happen. I am the type of person who can work with others. I will work with others, on people on both sides of the aisle, and we will accomplish the law change that allows the Attorney General to handle these issues. Thank you.
Mr. McGinty, can you specifically respond to Mr. O'Malley's plan for farming these type of cases out to the Attorney General?
Well, I have proposed a law to all the legislatures and have met with legislatures to talk to them about that law so that the Attorney General would have oversight. I have also taken action. I want statewide oversight so we can overlook all 88 counties so we have a equal and proportionate reaction to each of these. And they could create a specialty unit. We've made that proposal. In addition, we can start reforms earlier with the Attorney General. But I would note that in Mr. O'Malley's 6 years, they didn't take any case to the grand jury. They didn't farm them out. They never reached a UDF, a use of deadly force case, and brought a charge in his years. We have a fairer system. I called for independent investigations, not by the shooter's agency, but by a separate agency, whether it be the BCI, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, or another police agency other than the shooters. And it took some time to establish this, but we've reached that agreement with Cleveland. The Sheriff's Office is doing it. We've had, I asked for the Attorney General to come in and do the case in East Cleveland where Melissa Williams and Timothy Russell were shot and killed. We were the ones who brought them in, and it's had great success. It gives some independence. I agree there should be independence, and that's the law I proposed.
Can I respond to that just briefly?
Very.
Well, I would say first and foremost, I've never been Cuyahoga County prosecutor. I've been an employee of the county prosecutor's office, but I think we need to make that clear up front. Second of all, the difference between our two proposals is that Mr. McGinty wants to keep discretion within his own office if he chooses to refer the case out to the Attorney General, where I say it has to mandatorily be sent to the Attorney General's office. Oftentimes, discretion can lead to an abuse of discretion.
Let's transition into a discussion about restoring public confidence in both the prosecutor's office as well as the criminal justice system. I'll start with you, Mr. O'Malley. Putting aside the issue of whether the decision to indict or not indict the officer who shot Tamir Rice was proper, in the aftermath of that decision and the unrest that it has caused in our urban communities, what specific steps do you plan to take within our communities to ensure that the prosecutor's office is not perceived as being complicit in perpetuating racial injustice and being unresponsive to organizations like the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need a prosecutor that has sensitivity, and I think you need a prosecutor. What my plan is that I will immediately go out to the neighborhoods of this community, all neighborhoods, and build bridges. When you meet with people, when you go to their churches, when you go to their neighborhood meetings, when you go to their Block Watch Club meetings, and you look at people and shake their hands and look them in the eye, and they get to learn what type of character does this man possess or does this woman possess. When difficult decisions come down the pike, they at least, because of that relationship that has been established, have an understanding that while they may not always agree with your decision, they can respect the fact that they believe you're acting in the appropriate manner on behalf of their community. So the first thing I will do is get out to the communities, introduce myself. I've certainly been out into a lot of communities already as part of this campaign, but to continue to do so. The worst thing a prosecutor can do is be stuck on the 9th floor of the Justice Center, period. And I can tell you, we've seen it time and time again, but when Mr. McGinty won this office 4 years ago, he won with 1 out of every 3 voters supporting his candidacy. That means 2 out of every 3 voters thought there was a better candidate. It was more incumbent than ever, given that fact, that you get out to the community, build confidence, and prevent this whole situation that has happened. And again, there will be more difficult decisions at the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, but it's your relationship with the community that will determine how the community responds.
Mr. McGinty, would you like to respond?
I would. For 42 years, I've put my heart and soul into these positions I've held, whether it be a prosecutor, probation officer, judge, and now the county prosecutor. We have worked hard, and we have worked with all we have to do justice in each of these cases. We are out at the homicide scenes. We are out now checking the individual cases as they come in. We work our hearts out. We are there on the weekends. We have changed the system. We work very closely with the victims. We work very closely with the community. We have hired 5 more community. We had 1, now we have 5 witness advocates where we work with the victims. We work extremely hard. We work with the rape crisis. We work in the community. We go to the community. We care deeply. We have a staff that is deeply, deeply dedicated to their jobs. They're underpaid, overworked, could make twice the pay they do, and we are fulfilling our duties, and we will continue to do so. But let me note here that Mr. O'Malley is continuing to dodge the repeated questions of the newspapers and everyone else. What would he have done in the Tamir Rice case? Would he have indicted or not indicted? He is not answering that question. Would he have recommended that to, would he have even taken it to a grand jury? They never took it to a grand jury when he was in charge as the first assistant prosecutor. And he hasn't answered the question whether he would have charged in the Brelo case, when Officer Brelo was charged in East Cleveland high-speed chase and shoot. He has dodged that question, yes or no, and I ask him to give a yes or no answer to both.
May I?
You may.
Thank you.
Particularly if you're going to answer that particular question.
Absolutely. I will say this, and I have said repeatedly, I don't have all the facts and information that Mr. McGinty has or has at his disposal, but I can tell you this, I would have fairly and impartially and pursuant to the laws of criminal procedure presented those cases to a grand jury. And I would have not tainted the process by introducing evidence that was improper or releasing public information or releasing confidential information to the media. And I will remind Mr. McGinty one more time that I have not been the county prosecutor, though I hope to be soon.
I'll direct this question to each of you. Yesterday, the Plain Dealer released an article stating that the Cleveland Police Union has chosen to not endorse either of you as candidates for county prosecutor. What message do you believe this sends to the public, and how do you intend to combat any negative implications this may have on your candidacy? We can start with Mr. O'Malley.
Well, certainly. As I've stated repeatedly, I am seeking the support of every union, every neighborhood group, every citizen in this county, and if I can get a sweep of 100% of the vote, I'll take it. I absolutely will. But I can tell you that every community event I have been to, east and west, every community respects the work and understands the difficult nature that police officers have today. The question is that we need to really address is how we more professionally train them, how we work to ensure that these tragedies that have unfolded in our community over the last year or two never happen again. And if they do happen, that when these cases come down the pike and are handed off to the county prosecutor's office, they're handled in a manner which are fair and people feel that justice has been served. And if people do not have that feeling, as we all know, their respect and their confidence in the system, in both the court and the prosecutor's office will decline, and I think that's what we've seen here today.
Mr. McGinty?
Thank you. I've enjoyed the police union support in every election I had since 1992. I did not seek it. This time I have 5 cases pending against Cleveland police supervisors for the high-speed chase. I thought it would be inconsistent and hardly likely I would receive the support. There is a tension with the police department right now that's undeniable. They put up the blue wall and limited their cooperation in the Brelo case in that prosecution. We put a excellent case on. We thought it was well proven. The court disagreed, and we respect that decision. But there are lessons to learn here. There were rules of the Cleveland Police Department. They weren't followed. There was a high-speed chase that violated all of the rules of the Cleveland Police. There were supposed to be 3 cars. There were 62 cars. There were 100 police in and out of that chase at one point. They're extremely dangerous to the public and themselves. They engaged in a shootout that turned into a crossfire situation where many policemen also could have died. 2 people died who were unarmed and innocent. It was a turn signal violation that started out in a misinterpretation of a backfire. We have made corrections. These are tough decisions. It's tough to decide to recommend a charge or not to charge. In this case, some of the lessons I've learned we are going to correct with dash cams that we are purchasing for the city of Cleveland out of forfeiture funds, body cams that they purchased themselves from Mayor Jackson, and other training reforms and discipline. We want to have positives out of these terrible tragedies. Thank you.
I'd like to transition to another topic, tough on crime policies. The public is oftentimes frustrated when a crime that is committed in a suburban area of the city is charged or treated differently than a similar crime that's committed in the east side of Cleveland, for example. How will you ensure that this type of treatment is fair and balanced and does not lead to a disproportionate impact on racially and diverse citizens of Cleveland? Let's start with Mr. McGinty.
Thank you. We took a direct attack on overcharging when I took office. The prosecutor's office was frankly overcharging. We have made an effort to charge to the level of offense it deserves. An example would be the death penalty. We have reduced the death penalty by over 90%, the death penalty indictments and charges. When Mr. O'Malley was in charge of the office as the first assistant prosecutor, the first assistant prosecutor, the policy of the office was, and I quote, if it's eligible for the death penalty, they will receive the death penalty indictment, period. We have changed that, and we change that on all levels. We look at all cases. We are not overcharging. We do not want individuals to carry a burden through life. If they're stealing a bike out of an attached garage, that should not be an aggravated burglary. It should start out as a theft or a diversionable event that they can correct in their life. We are looking for consistent charging. We are doing crime strategies. We are mapping, we are looking at where the crime takes place, and we are intelligently prosecuting these cases. There are great concentrations of crime in areas that are grossly underpoliced. We're trying to correct that. We're working with the gang unit, we're working with CPD in a symbiotic fashion to correct these deficiencies, attack the violent crime where it takes place, put our efforts into violent crime, dangerous crime, and not the low-level crime. We're making great strides.
Mr. O'Malley?
Thank you. I can't resist, but for the third time, I was not in charge of the policies for the death penalty cases, and I have never been Cuyahoga County prosecutor. I will say this, I have pledged at the GCC event roughly a week or two ago that, and I see it in my own communities, I saw it when I was a criminal defense attorney, depending on which side of a border, and as everybody in this room knows, Cuyahoga County has 60 plus municipalities, and they handle low-level cases much different from one municipal court to the next. I have pledged within 30 days of taking office to convene a summit of local prosecutors so that we may have consistency in charging. It shouldn't matter if you're on the Euclid side of 185th or the Cleveland side of 185th, or in Solon or Bainbridge, or Brooklyn or Old Brooklyn, which would be Cleveland. It shouldn't matter. And what I plan on doing is having a summit, having consistent strategies for charging that really helps, and most of those low-level cases are generally pushed by the drug trade, but having consistent charging so that you're not treated differently across one border, but also having consistent ways in which we may get those individuals into some type of treatment or help to prevent the recidivism that is plaguing our community.
Mr. O'Malley, can you point to a specific case or a specific example of a case where you've handled that might give any member of the public confidence that you have a demonstrated record of accomplishment in civil rights issues regarding race, police misconduct, particularly considering that you'll be coming from Parma into another area of the city?
Well, with all clarity, you know, while I've worked for Parma for the last 8 months, I still am a resident of the city of Cleveland. I've been a resident in my house for 25 years, and I don't plan on leaving. I was a councilman in that area, and I represented 23,000 people of diverse backgrounds within my ward. So the fact that I am the City of Parma Safety Director, or have been for 8 months, you know, the City of Parma has a police force that solves many of the crimes that are actually committed in my own neighborhood in Old Brooklyn, because, again, we have that boundary situation, and they cross Brook Park Road, and they're no longer in Old Brooklyn, they're in Parma. But I have learned, and the benefits that I will learn from my job as Safety Director is getting our municipal police forces to work better. I have also had a history of working with many within the African American community. I assisted in fair housing issues in a previous work, so in violations of the Federal Fair Housing Act. So I have worked with people in the minority community, and I can tell you, I've been in the minority community, so I'm quite comfortable that if elected, I will continue what I have been doing for the last 3 or 4 months, and what I have done throughout my life is engaging the minority community, building confidence in my leadership, and so that when they need to, that they can pick up a phone and have an honest dialogue with me on the issues that are plaguing their community, and then knowing that if I don't answer my phone, that their call will be returned.
Mr. McGinty, before our time runs out, could you speak to the specific issue of the importance of diversity and inclusion within the prosecutor's office, and what steps that you have either taken or will continue to take to ensure that the office is comprised of individuals that are reflective of the communities in which we serve?
I will. We are committed to diversity. Since we took over the office, diversity has greatly increased in our office. We more reflect the community that we serve than we did before. The attorneys hired in minority attorneys are 53% greater. Women are 20% greater. We're in parity with in the genders. We overall, our office has been blessed with diversity in the sense that we now have managers. Where we had few, we have many. 9 of the 11 managers and supervisors of the office have promoted or hired by me. We've made a great stride. We recruit through, often the attorneys through the clerkships. This summer, half our clerks were minority clerks. I am particularly involved in the recruitment and the efforts to obtain clerks and to obtain minority employees. In fact, my wife and I are sponsors of the Stokes Scholarship Fund at the Cleveland Marshall College of Law, where I went, and since I became prosecutor, I've donated half my paycheck, half my net pay, to scholarships. Because I already had a salary, and my wife and I decided to do that. And it goes through minority scholarships through the Cleveland Foundation. So we are committed. Believe me, we're committed. We're making great progress, and it's reflected in our results. Thank you.
Mr. O'Malley, and can you speak to what you will do if elected to ensure that those policies and programs that are in place remain that way?
Well, certainly.
Or improve, of course.
Certainly. I share Mr. McGinty's commitment to diversity and the need for that office to reflect the community which we represent. You know, in my past tenure as a county prosecutor, I was on a committee that actively recruited minority candidates, but I think what we really need to do too, and I would travel from college to college, law school to law school, working with candidates, but we really have to begin the process of pushing law schools. Quite frankly, there are not enough African-American males who are attorneys, and certainly not enough African-American males who are prosecutors, and they inordinately reflect the individuals who have their first contact with the criminal justice system. And so I think it's incumbent upon all elected officials, including the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor, to push our law schools to ensure diversity so that we can more adequately reflect our community.
Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, we're going to transition to the question and answer period, with our audience. As we mentioned, some of these questions have been selected ahead of time. If you would like to submit a question for consideration, please go ahead and tweet that at the City Club or use one of the index cards on your table, and we'll try to filter that. May I have our first question?
Thank you. My name is Anthony Price. I'm a senior at Shaw High School. And thank you, Mr. McGinty and Mr. O'Malley, for coming to the City Club today. Mr. McGinty, a lot of people have accused you in regards to not following the proper practices in regards to the grand jury. How would you answer those accusations in response to the Tamir Rice case? And Mr. O'Malley, since the question is posed to you today, what would you do differently if you would have been in that situation? What would have you done differently?
Mr. McGinty?
Thank you, Mr. Price, for a good question. We decided to go with a public investigation in all these use of deadly force cases. When I came into office, there was a Henderson case, which was very disturbing. There was a man who was chased and he was beaten, and it was filmed on infrared camera from a helicopter. And there was no indictments from the predecessor, nothing. It raised, and I've seen other cases raise a lot of disturbance and concerns in the community. So I decided we're going to go to all cases with a report from an independent agency, if possible, and a presentation to the grand jury. The independent report would go out to the public, so we didn't have another Ferguson. So we didn't have another rumors. Before, the process was total secrecy. The prosecutor made a decision in the privacy of his or her own office whether to charge or not to charge. It was not charged. It didn't go to the grand jury. None during his period went to the grand jury and received a charge. We decided to make it open. We put the policies out there. We put the reports out there. There were absolutely no complaints when we did it in the Brelo case or the other cases. Now we have some complaints. I understand them, but we wanted openness. We wanted transparency, and it helps. You'll note that the plain dealer was covered it, and they said the McGinty has been methodical and transparent in releasing. There is no indication McGinty has been less than thorough or honest or exhibited bias or mishandled the duty in any way. McGinty, by the way, is the same prosecutor, after all, who earlier this year aggressively tried Cleveland police officer Michael Brelo for felony manslaughter, even though the case was acquitted. We are being open. It's better than secrecy. Let the people in this community know what the facts are in a high-speed chase so they can deal with them. Thank you for your fine question.
Mr. O'Malley?
Certainly. You know, my father taught me at a young age never to believe everything I read in a newspaper. A very young age, especially that one. But in any event, what would I do differently? What would I do differently? Where do we start? Let's start with the fact that the investigation should not have drug out 15 months. That should never have happened. It should not happen in the Tanisha Anderson case. It shouldn't have happened in the dozen other cases that are sitting around getting stale. First and foremost, Mr. McGinty has had an insane desire, and I don't know what drives it, to continue to release information to the media. He did it when he was a judge in the Soul case. He was emailing stuff to then the PD head, Susan Goldberg, that tainted his participation, that caused him to recuse himself. He also, for reasons unknown, released a confidential medical record of Mr. Soul that almost landed a plain dealer reporter in jail for contempt. We have an obligation in law enforcement, and a county prosecutor is law enforcement, to keep these matters secret. Back to the Rice situation. There was selective releases of information timed to perhaps benefit one news organization over another that, in my opinion, tainted the process. That continued throughout the case. I think it had the effect of tainting and biasing the grand jury, without question. Then certainly we have the issues, the officers coming in and without being sworn, without being subject to cross-examination, read from a report. I think that was wrong. And then finally, I see Michael Nelson here today, and I know he is very interested. After this whole thing went down, the NAACP wants and desires even a selective release of transcripts. I think it is incumbent upon the current county prosecutor to join them in seeking the transcripts, seeking on that motion to at least get the part they need released so they understand what happened in this case. That's what I do different.
Thank you, Mr. Malley. Can we have our second question?
Could I respond?
If you can do so in a very short period of time.
Thank you. Mr. O'Malley seems to have a problem with the plain dealer and the coverage of him. And I would say that goes back to the articles that were written about him and his office that helped end his term. It was a very political operation. He ran the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party political machine out of his office, as did other machines with Mr. Russo and Mr. DeMora that helped their demise, that helped the end of their term. So take it with a grain of salt, what you hear today from Mr. O'Malley.
We can proceed to our next audience question.
First of all, thank you for being here at the debate, Mr. McGinty and Mr. O'Malley. For Mr. McGinty, if you are reelected on March 15, 2016, how will you make an effort to do different in your office of the prosecutor office in the city of Cleveland for the community? And then I have a question for Mr. O'Malley. Go ahead and ask it. For Mr. O'Malley, if you are elected on March 15, 2016, how will you positively change the perception of the office of the prosecutor in the Cleveland community in your top 3 goals?
Mr. McGinty.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. We will continue to work for the criminal justice system reform, which is a program I started in 2005. So for over 10 years, we've been looking to improve the way we conduct business in a business-like manner. We collect performance statistics. We look at best practices of other cities. We are trying to create a culture of continuous improvement. Part of that is looking at crime strategies. We formed a crime strategies unit, and we are just implementing that now. We are looking at where crime takes place. We're looking at the limited number of individuals who do it. We're looking at where the shootings and deaths take place and the gang activity goes, and we're trying to work in those neighborhoods that are under-policed and under-prosecuted, in a sense, and take the individuals, a small number of individuals that are responsible for those crimes, and make that community safer. We're constantly reevaluating what we're doing. We're looking at the best practices of other states and communities to see if our work and performance compares well with theirs. We look at the ones that are more successful than us, and there are many, and we try to copy their strategies. We have begun a number of new initiatives, and we're going to continue to do so. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. O'Malley.
Well, let me first get back to Mr. McGinty's previous statement. You know, I talked in my opening about temperament. which is how one reacts to specific situations. It's their nature, their human nature. And what we just saw Mr. McGinty do is, again, spontaneously attack me personally, which I found offensive, somehow relating that the predecessor in the county prosecutor's office was somehow involved in county corruption, which couldn't be anything more further from the truth. And again, sitting here in what I perceive to be a heavily Democratic crowd, throwing mud and throwing rocks at both Mike O'Malley and the Democratic Party will get you nowhere, period.
Mr. O'Malley, can you
And then I will get to the
directly
issues
address
as
the
three goals for the justice system reform. Yes, I will tell you what, we need my goals upon getting into office. You know, Mr. McGinty talks about him being the father of the justice system reform movement. He certainly was at the forefront with others, but it's what have you done for me lately? And again, back to temperament, we have judges, all of them, who voted, my understanding, overwhelmingly to withdraw from the justice system reform movement because of the temperament of my opponent. We need a prosecutor, and I will be a prosecutor, who works well with others, works with the public defender, works with the legal aid attorneys, works with the prosecutors within our office, and I know there's many of you here today. I will work with people in a professional manner, number one. Two, get back to community-based prosecution. We have been hearing things throughout this meeting today about lack of confidence in the office. The community-based prosecution method put prosecutors into neighborhoods and restored faith in the office, built some confidence. You knew your prosecutors, you knew the cases who they were handling. It was a much better system. Third and foremost, I want to change the grand jury process for death cases involving law enforcement. Get that changed in Columbus. Thank you.
May I respond?
Look, I'd like to move on to our next question, just so we can get as many from the audience as possible.
Well, first I want to thank you both for your many years of public service to this community and for being here. My question is this: given the clear conflict of interest when the prosecutor prosecutes police officers, what general alternative do you suggest which would eliminate that conflict of interest?
Mr. McGinty, would you like to start?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Cox. Well, we have proposed the change in statute that would give the Attorney General, who has some distance, who is also law enforcement, but some distance to get this overall perspective of the 88 counties and look at all these cases. We make tough decisions all the time, though, sir, regarding police officers. We've indicted and charged and prosecuted dozens of police officers. I've personally tried cases and prosecuted cases for murder and other charges against police officers. No one enjoys it, but it is our job, and we have a job to do. It is our duty, and we will do our duty and continue to do our duty. Would it be better served if we did a practice like New York has just begun, with all use of deadly force cases going to one agency? I think we would. If they can afford it and the legislature do it, we will support it. Thank you. Mr.
O'Malley?
Again, your question about conflict, it's absolute. You know, the difficulty with these police cases is oftentimes on one area there are star witness. They made an arrest that we need to prosecute an individual on. And on the other hand, they may be a suspect in a potential crime. So the conflict that is there, it's real, which is why I have proposed absolutely that the Attorney Generals must conduct those investigations and prosecute them to eliminate any potential conflict.
If I could just follow up on that. So we have this proposal to the Ohio General Assembly, or potential proposal, to have the Attorney General handle these cases. If that fails, where do we go next? In 30 seconds, Mr. Ginty, can you address that?
Well, this has been the system since the beginning of Ohio, is that the prosecutors have the responsibility and the duty to prosecute these cases when called for. And it's our duty to look at the law, follow the law, and apply the facts as found to do with them. I have taken the extra step of taking every case to the grand jury and giving the final decision to the grand jury, which has never happened before in this county. Although it has in Franklin County, and that's where I copied it from. It's gone since 1980 in Columbus. They take every use of deadly force case to the grand jury, and it has caused confidence and community satisfaction. Although the better practice now, and this is a new practice that has come about, is to have another separate agency do the investigative part. And even better yet is to have the overview from a larger agency who specializes in it, as they're trying in New York.
Mr. O'Malley, should every use of deadly force case go to the grand jury?
let me just follow up on a mission, then I'll answer your question. You know, if the law is not passed, what I will propose doing is working out some type of arrangement, perhaps with Franklin County, where they handle our lethal deadly use of deadly force cases, and perhaps we handle theirs, and have a relationship established that way to eliminate the conflict. But I think it's a decent policy to, and I think it's probably the right policy, to send all cases to the grand jury. But when you send them to the grand jury, we cannot make the mistake that was made in the Rice case, which is making the ultimate decision for them via expert reports or via a recommendation from the county prosecutor. And I think that's where that case went astray.
Our next question.
Excuse me. Good afternoon, gentlemen, and thank you both for being here today. There seems to be a recurring theme in the room today, and so here's the question for both of you. How do you intend to repair or create trust among a vast segment of voting and non-voting citizenry that believes that neither of your candidacies is an ideal option, either due to questionable handling of cases that involve police shootings of unarmed citizens and or partaking in an overzealous prosecutorial track record of black people?
Mr. O'Malley.
Certainly. You know, I will say my opponent has been masterful in painting, as he tried to today, I think on 3 or 4 separate occasions, painting me with the brush that I was the previous Cuyahoga County prosecutor. And what I would suggest to you and to everybody in this room, I have never been Cuyahoga County prosecutor. I have been a county prosecutor, and that as the county prosecutor, I will ensure that there's policies established that treat all people fairly, regardless of their race, gender, or sexual orientation, period. We need, you know, first and foremost, and that's basically where I'm at on that question. I don't remember if I got answered all of it. If I didn't, please let me know, but.
Thank you for your response.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank
Mr.
you.
McGinty.
We have made concrete progress in all these regards. Our indictments are going down each year. Our indictments, our share of prisoners, which was at one time a quarter of all prisoners in Ohio, came from Cuyahoga County. It has gone down in 2012 from 17% to 13%. We are indicting less and less each year. We're aiming to indict less and rehabilitate more and focus on habitual violent offenders. That has had an effect on minorities indicted dramatically. There's been a dramatic reduction in black defendants indicted, minority defendants indicted, Cleveland defendants indicted, low-level cases against them indicted. While at the same time our conviction rate is rising on the high-level cases that we're prosecuting. We are involved in the most successful task force in the county's history right now that I began with partners, is the Rape Kit Task Force. We have taken the untested rape kits, thousands of them that sat and stockpiled during the period of Mr. O'Malley being the first assistant prosecutor, and we've attacked that stockpile. We are prosecuting. We are prosecuting 1,000 cases of the 4,866 that the Attorney General's office has tested for us. They sat there for 20 years. We are going to work. We are taking these forgotten rape cases and these forgotten victims and prosecuting them and bring them to justice. Thank you.
Do we have another
Well,
audience
can I follow up with that?
We're limited on time, so let's just get to the last audience question and we'll go from there.
Okay. We actually have a question from Twitter for both candidates. When the family of a murder victim asks for a lesser charge, why isn't their request considered?
Can you repeat the question for us, Erica?
Sure. When the family of a murder victim asks for a lesser charge, why isn't their request considered?
I mean, it's always considered. We always consult with the victim's family in a murder case, especially in every case, and what they think is extremely important to the prosecutor's office. But ultimately, it's the prosecutor's responsibility to make sure that the safety of the community and the overall consistency is taken into play. We often do exactly what the victim's family wants, but sometimes they may want a death penalty case where we don't think it's appropriate, or we don't think it could be upheld by law, or that there isn't proof beyond almost all doubt, which is required practically now in a death penalty case. So we make a decision to be consistent with the our prior decisions and the law and what is best for the community. If sometimes a family member is the actual defendant and they want the case greatly reduced, well, that would be unfair and inconsistent with the other cases. So ultimately, it's the prosecutor's decision, although we take great concern with whatever and great care to listen to the family and explain our actions and why.
Mr. O'Malley?
Certainly, and I would say in every particular case, the concerns and issues of the family always need to be addressed. But I need to go back to the rape kit issue because that is one of the great smoke screens that has occurred. Let me just say this. Let me start off by saying I will never do anything to win an election. I will not make stuff up and I will not mislead the public, period. The rape kits in this county and throughout the state date back over 20 years, period. Richard Cordray, as Attorney General, raised the issue in 2010 that we needed to start a dialogue. And much of this came from a result of the Anthony Sowell case because, quite frankly, rape kits are kept in the possession of local law enforcement agencies. So, quite frankly, the county prosecutor's office doesn't know how many rape kits the Cleveland Police Department has. Quite frankly, the Cleveland Police Department didn't know how many rape kits the Cleveland Police Department had. On and on and on. But the rape kits, when the initiative was undertaken, Mike DeWine got elected. In May of 2011, he said, we're going to have a statewide protocol. Mind you, this was a year and a half before Tim McGinty became prosecutor. He issued a directive that we're going to have a statewide protocol. Rape kits started being sent to BCI. He decided he was going to reallocate resources and have enough people at his BCI, which is an investigative where they do the DNA testing, to handle these rape kits. They go right from the local police departments right to BCI. Quite frankly, the county prosecutor's office has nothing to do with the transmission. By December of 2011, as reported in the Northeast Media Group, more than 2,000 of the 4,800 rape kits had gone to BCI. That was 10 months before Tim McGinty became prosecutor. So I can assure you, by the time Tim became prosecutor, a majority of the rape kits were already in the possession of BCI, and it was local law enforcement agencies with the work of Mike DeWine who got that established. While he has done a yeoman's job of investigating after the DNA hit, he did not send rape kits to BCI, and he did not end the backlog.
Thank you.
May I respond to that important point?
We are going to proceed over to closing statements. Thank you, gentlemen, for your responses. The conversation was great and for answering our questions. We have determined that Mr. O'Malley is going to start with the closing statements, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure to be here today. I want to thank the City Club and its members for hosting this important event. 3 months ago, I started on my campaign to be your next Cuyahoga County prosecutor. I have met thousands of citizens who have expressed their concerns to me regarding our criminal justice system. There is a strong belief that the system does not treat everyone fairly. And there is a strong belief that this office does not administer justice fairly. Even with the public's confidence in the system and in the office at an all-time low, I am inspired by the people of the county who have supported my campaign. I have also received a great deal of encouragement from individuals who work in the justice system, individuals who know the system better than anyone, and who realize we can and need to do better. When I'm elected, I will restore integrity and confidence back into the criminal justice system and that office. I will do this by building bridges to all neighborhoods in this county. I will advocate for a change in the state law to reform the grand jury, as I discussed, regarding use of deadly force cases. I will restore the community-based prosecution effort that has now fallen to the wayside. I will convene a meeting with municipalities, as I indicate, to get consistent charging on low-level felonies. And I will say this to the employees who remain at the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. I have pledged to you, I have heard your voices, I have received your text, and we will work together, and we will restore the morale and the work environment that will help us retain our employees and make that office a productive work environment. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm pleased that you joined us, and I respectfully ask all loyal Democrats to vote for me on March 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Mr. McGinty, your closing statement.
Thank you. And I want to thank the City Club and my opponent for the opportunity to discuss our visions. And I'd like to thank my father, it's his 88th birthday here today. He took a few minutes away from his job. He's going back to work shortly. So let's get to the real issue. The voters of Cuyahoga County have an important choice. Is this county going to have a professional prosecutor's office like we established, a non-political office, or go back to the political patronage machine that failed to stop and see the corruption that so damaged our community with DeMora and Russo and the other political machines that were being operated? That's the underlying issue here. The Plain Dealer noted Sunday, one of the columnists, that Mr. O'Malley served as the political enforcer and patronage czar. It took the federal prosecutors to come in and do the job that my opponent failed to do as first assistant prosecutor, to stop the corruption. Mr. O'Malley was in charge, but the watchdog was asleep. My opponent has no platform, just slander and attack and innuendo. He is a career politician attempting to exploit a tragedy, and that is why he's in this race. He has still refused to answer the question whether he would have prosecuted the Brillo or the Tamir Rice cases. Your prosecuting attorney should not be a politician, but an experienced trial attorney, and that I am. We have passed this office, the test for a professional office. We have the most successful task force in our county's history with the Rape Kit Task Force that I formed. We have indicted over 440 individuals so far. We have identified 162 of those being serial rapists. And you have read the many articles about it. I knew when I was hired 33 years ago that this was more than a job. It was a calling. I am still humbled every day by the importance of the work we have to do for the community and enormous responsibility we have. I will never forget that lives depend on it. I promise you again that I will give you my whole heart to fulfilling my duties to you. I thank you for the honor of serving as your county prosecutor, and I respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you, gentlemen. That concludes our debate, and we'll have Crystal Bryant to close us out.
All right. Today at the City Club, we've been enjoying a debate between two of the candidates for the Democratic nomination for Cuyahoga County Prosecutor, Tim McGinty and Michael O'Malley. Our moderator was Brandon Cox. Thank you, Mr. McGinty, and thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Thank you, Mr. Cox, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our forum is now adjourned.